Yo, welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media, and this is Salam Media Highlights for myself, Salailo Makwidiri. And we're going to be bringing you a very deeply important conversation with British journalist, author, and human rights advocate, Dr. Yvonne Ridley, very, very good friend of the station, who was recently detained by Israeli forces while on a humanitarian mission to Gaza as part of the Global Sumud Flotilla, something that we've been following quite closely here at Salam Media. And after days in detention, which she described as savage, she was released, flown down to Istanbul with the assistance of the Libyan government, and reunited with her family. This is her first interview with South African media since her release, and it comes at a time when Gaza continues to face a humanitarian catastrophe. Aid is still not getting into Gaza, despite what we've been told. And it's a very, very important discussion, very, very important reflection to get from someone that has dealt with the IOF directly. I think it's an opportunity that many of us won't get to have. And it's always, I think, eye-opening to hear insights from first-person basis. And we'll be speaking to Dr. Yvonne Ridley today, not just about her personal ordeal, but also about the global fight for justice, freedom, and Palestinian liberation. She's joining us from our virtual platform. I hope she can see me and she can see me. Dr. Yvonne, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Always a pleasure having you on air.
Always a pleasure to be here as well. Thank you for inviting me.
No, pleasure's all ours. The last time you and I spoke, I think you were still making your way out of Libya. You were going to join the rest of the Global Sumud Flotilla contingent. Can you give us perspective from that moment until the moment that you guys were ultimately kidnapped by the IOF? What really happened?
Well, I think that the whole world knows now that flotillas are weather dependent. And of course, if the weather is inclement, then it slows down the flotilla. And this is what was happening. There was no certainty of being able to forecast when we would arrive in Gaza. But after we spoke to you, we'd by this time gathered all of the aid that we were going to put onto the Omar al Mokhtar boat, which was part of the Libyan flotilla. Everybody has a flotilla these days. They're like podcasts. So we had the Libyan flotilla, and we adapted our ship to be a medical support ship for any hospital ship in the area. And although we weren't strictly part of the Sumud flotilla, we did join them physically in the Mediterranean, and set sail for Gaza. We had our own strategy in place for when we arrived, and we really were confident that the climate was right and that we would be given safe passage because, of course, Italy, Spain, and I think another country offered a naval escort. But that turned out to be more window dressing to satisfy the growing public concern over aid not getting into Gaza. And our world leaders knew fine well what was happening inside Gaza, and they didn't want to be seen to be encouraging it, although Britain, America, Australia, a lot of the G7 countries were involved in supplying the weapons that were used to bomb Gaza, these weapons that were used to shred human beings, decapitate, and slice off limbs. The G7 countries were all aware of what was going on, as was Frau Genocide, as I call Ursula von der Leyen. So we just wanted to open the mission was simple. We just wanted to open up a humanitarian corridor and get into Gaza port and distribute aid in Gaza port, which would enable mothers to give baby formula to their children who were dying in their arms. Hundreds of babies died of starvation. And, we're in 2025, and this was allowed to happen. When we got close to Gaza, off the coast of Egypt, we were boarded or attacked or warned or threatened by the Israelis to turn around and go back. They made it clear that they would board the ships if they progressed, and so they had advised all of us to turn around and head back from where we came. Because our ship wasn't part of the Samud flotilla, we had an emergency meeting that night, and the captain said, we're faced with two options. We either turn round and go back, or we stay where we are and end up being boarded. And I said, well, there is a third option. And he said, what's that? I said, we make a run for Gaza. And, can we do it? And everybody was enthusiastic about the idea. We'd invested so much of our own time on this boat that to give up at that point, being so close to Gaza, was anathema to us. So we decided that that's what we would do. And so did lots of the boats on the Summit flotilla. And we had every right. We might not have had the naval escorts that the world thought we had, but we did have maritime law, the Geneva Conventions, and international law behind us. We should have been able to sail through the international waters into Gaza's waters, and from there into Gaza's port. We all made a break for it. Maybe we should have coordinated among ourselves. Obviously, we'll be looking back at what happened, and we were overwhelmed and boarded by the Israelis. Their drones were everywhere, and they took control of our ship. And we told them, we are different nationalities in international water, and what you are doing is piracy, kidnap, and you're going to take us hostage. And they totally ignored the warnings. So it's not as though they blundered in without knowing what they were doing. They knew full well that they were breaking international law, and they took control of the ship. They then sent the men, 14 of them, all Libyans, down into the cargo hold where the aid was. And there were 3 women, including myself, a Canadian Egyptian and another Scottish woman. And we were sent back to our cabin. And we were taken against our will to Ashdod in Israel, which, annoyingly and frustratingly, we had to pass Gaza to get to Israel. So But I kept looking at the skyline and I didn't see anything that I recognized of the Gaza skyline as I remembered it.
Hmm. I'm sure that was a scene. It was a moment knowing that you were so close and you could now see it, but the circumstances that you were seeing it are not those that you would have hoped for. Um, I've spoken to a few South Africans who were part of the global Sumut flotilla, and they gave a description of their interactions with the IOF or IDF. Some of them said, these were essentially children. You could tell that they were young men who were even stumbling all over themselves because they didn't know what they were doing. What was your assessment of them being so close with the IDF and knowing and understanding that they could or they are responsible of some of the most harrowing human rights violations that we've seen in recent times, and now they're interacting with you? How was that experience like, and what did you make of them so close, and essentially now giving you orders?
It was incredibly frustrating because we were trained in being th- not aggressive. We didn't want to a repeat of the Mavi Marmara, and so we went through special training for hostile environments and war environments, and how to interact with the with aggressors. So the first thing that we did was we all gathered on the top deck of the Omar Al Mokhtar, which was uh, where our intensive care unit was. And there was a huge poster of Dr. Hossam Abu Safia there, and we had called the deck after him in his honor. He was the heroic doctor who was arrested by Israel from his position as director of one of the hospitals that they obliterated. And he was last seen walking through the ruins towards Israeli tanks.
Mm,
Um, so that we'd gathered there and we sat there and we held our hands up, not in surrender, but just to let them know we're peace activists, we're not carrying any weapons. And and so, we were never a threat to them. I have to say, they were unbearably nice. They tried to give us um, water and sandwiches, which we robustly refused and said, give them to the Palestinians. They're starving. And eventually we did engage a couple of them, and they were just bits of kids,
mm,
and said to them, you are representing the most hated nation on earth. What, how do you feel about that? And one just said, we know everybody hates us, we don't care, we are we're on our own, we've always been on our own, even our friends don't like us, and that suits us fine. So there was this real sort of victim mentality
mm.
entrenched within them, and they it was very hard to penetrate this soulless barrier that they had around themselves. And one did ask me about October the 7th. And I said, before I answer your questions about October the 7th, I want you to answer me a question first. And he said, what's that? I said, why did it take the IDF 6 hours to react to the Hamas attack.
Mm.
You know, you were 45 minutes away from helicopter from the kibbutz, and yet it took you more than 6 hours. And why did Netanyahu not react when he was told 10 days earlier by Egyptian intelligence what Hamas was planning? And he
Mm.
just looked and seemed oblivious to this, and just went away quietly and didn't ask any questions after that. October the 7th is like their Holocaust. It's the one and only thing
Mm.
that they have got to play as a card, and that has disappeared as well.
Mm.
So, as I say, they were unbearably nice. But when we got to Ashdod, as soon as we stepped onto the quayside, the whole mood changed. And we were then in the hands of the civilian police, military police, and various other factions of the IDF. And they abused us, they hit us, they made me strip search on arriving at Ashdod. They ripped off my hijab. They were so obnoxious, and they processed us. And as I was standing in one of the queues watching what was happening, it suddenly occurred to me, you know, that I had this feeling of deja vu, and I remembered reading a Jewish woman's account of how she had stitched her family heirlooms and possessions inside her clothes to stop the Nazis from stealing any heirlooms or jewelry or anything of value. And I stood there and watched the grandchildren of the Holocaust going through our clothes, going through the seams, going through the hemlines, going through the linings of jackets to try and find anything of value, sentimental value or otherwise, that was hidden from them. And I found that quite disturbing. And when they went through my clothes, they pulled out a t-shirt, a grey t-shirt, which was inside out.
Mm.
And the Israeli woman looked at it and she pulled it back out and she held it up, and it had a big picture of Layla Khalid, the
Mm.
Palestinian hijacker from the 70s. It's that iconic portrait that adorns some of the walls in the occupied West Bank. And it was of Layla with her kafaya and her trademark Kalashnikov. And underneath it had a woman's place is in the resistance.
Mm.
And she just held this up and looked at me defiantly, as if to say, "What is this?" And suddenly, this Israeli soldier, this man, lunged forward with a knife and started slashing and just attacked the t shirt until it was absolutely shredded. And when he finished, he looked at me as if to say, "There, what do you think of that?" And I said, "After all these years, and you're still scared of her."
Mm.
And I haven't I do speak to Layla now and again. She's been very, very ill, but I know that this will make her laugh. That even today, you know, 50 years on, she still rattles them.
Mm.
And it was just surreal seeing this the viciousness of this attack, as though he was actually stabbing a human. He was just running his knife through. It was very chilling. They took our medications away. What's this? Oh, this is my medication. I need to take those tablets daily. Really, in the bin.
Mm.
And I knew that I could go without my medication for at least 3 or 4 days. But this was happening to diabetic people who need their insulin. It was happening to people with heart conditions who needed their heart pills and blood pressure pills, and some real life-saving medicine just went straight in the bin. They took my hearing aids
Mm.
and took the batteries out, threw the batteries in the bin, and they said, "Do you need these?" And I said, "Why? Are you going to throw them in the bin?" And they just threw them back at me. And I still haven't put any batteries in yet, so I really am deaf to the IDF. um, I think that the gallows humor that we had protected us to a certain extent, that and the solidarity. And I saw in the distance, in this vast hall where we were all being processed, I saw in the distance Chief Mandela,
Mm.
and he, was holding his composure as you would expect him to, and acting in a dignified manner. I didn't see this, but I was told that Greta Thunberg had been grabbed by the Israelis, and she's a tiny little pocket rocket.
Mm.
She's very petite, and these adult men had just grabbed her and made her embrace the Israeli flag.
Mm.
And, and were taking selfies, and it was all about degradation and humiliation. As I say, they strip searched.
All right, we seem to have lost Dr. Yvonne Ridley for a moment there, but I think, yeah, she was giving a really, really important first-hand perspective on being under Israeli custody, being kidnapped by the IDF, essentially, and yeah, man, I think harrowing stories, harrowing stories. If you just joined us, Dr. Yvonne Ridley was among some of the activists who were part of the Global Summit Flotilla. Her boat specifically was not part of the flotilla, but ultimately they were going to travel with the flotilla who, again, were attempting to deliver humanitarian aid into Gaza. Most of the boats, if not all, that were part of that flotilla, including hers, were intercepted by Israeli forces, and she was kidnapped. She was detained, arrested, and taken into custody, and only released after a period of detention. The Libyan government reportedly paid for her experience. They were part and parcel of, her journey, and I think they were very, very instrumental in getting her there. And yeah, I think it's once we get her back, I think it'll be really interesting to continue with the conversation and just to get a bit more insight on her time in detention, because she was quoted, saying that. 2 months with the Taliban was better than 2 days in Israeli custody. And I would like her to just expand a bit more on that, because I'm sure if you know Dr. Yvonne Ridley, she was detained by the Taliban some years ago. Dr. Ridley, are you back? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. There's
No worries.
obviously some people don't want us talking about this, but
You know who. We both know who. um I'm not sure if you got my last end there. When I was talking about you being quoted that 2 months with the Taliban is better than 2 days in Israeli custody. Can you expand a bit more on that? If possible, draw parallels, for our listeners who might not know, your background and ultimately,
Mhm.
the history that you have with the Taliban and Afghanistan.
Well, from the moment of arrest by the Taliban, and they treated me with courtesy and respect. There was no strip search. There was no sort of skin to skin body searches, nothing intrusive. They were quite distressed when I went on hunger strike, and despite that, they still brought food into my prison cell, which was actually about the same size as the prison that I was held at, the cell that I was held in Kiziat prison in southern Israel. But the place where I was held by the Taliban in Jalalabad had a beautiful Afghan carpet and quite chunky padded pillows around, for you to lie down and on or go to sleep. And the room was also air conditioned. Um, and I had access to a flush toilet and hot water and a shower and a bath. Um, in Israel, I had a concrete floor that I put a wafer thin mattress down on. In truth, I was quite happy with the solid floor because I really like a firm mattress. So this was not a hardship for me. But the mattresses were wafer thin. And I also went on hunger strike there. They couldn't care less.
Mm,
Um, the food was it was easy not to eat the food, unlike the Afghan food, which smelled delicious. It was easy not to eat this food because it was crawling with ants, and the bread was stale, and it was really very poor food, and so it was the abuse that we received daily from the prison guards that disturbed me. But what disturbed me more than anything else, Israel likes to portray itself as being progressive, modern, a home where feminists can relax and be comfortable. But there was absolutely no signs of sisterhood between the female prison officers and the female detainees. It was awful. There were hundreds of us crammed into these cells. The cell I had in Afghanistan, I had to myself. I also had the key and was able to lock myself in or open the door and wander.
mm,
So I certainly didn't have that in Israel. But some of the women were on their monthly periods and they needed pads. And we would ask the prison officers, please, we need pads in this cell. And it was in a minute, and maybe you wouldn't see them till the next day. And of
mm,
course, it just wasn't practical. And I don't know of any woman that would let another woman go without sanitary towels, something as basic as that. But these women did. And the prison, it was run on a very misogynistic regime. And the chilling thing was that the Israeli women were the face of the patriarchy. They were the front
mm,
line, and they held this in a very aggressive way for the men, or for the benefit of the men. And it really was awful. When I first arrived at the prison, I had on a t-shirt. The previous one had been removed because it had the Global Summit Flotilla logo on it. And they gave me another t-shirt, one of my own, to wear. And when I got into this room, there were two female officers in what looked like a medical room, and they told me to remove my shirt, which I did. And I had a sports bra on underneath, and they said, take it off. And there was a window wide open. The room was fully illuminated, but there was total darkness outside. And it was obvious that there were some peeping toms or whatever they were uh, near the window watching this parade of women taking off their bras. And the fact that these women facilitated that for the men, I just found really disturbing, wondering what sort of women are they? You know, it was awful. So after that humiliation, I was then given a white t-shirt and then a jumper, and I was told to keep that jumper on. And obviously, when women don't have support, we're wobbling all over the place. And again, I think that was for the titillation of the men. And again, it was delivered by the women. We were put in a cell and not allowed out. That didn't happen to me with the Taliban. Nobody came in and ridiculed me. I had an interpreter there every time there was a meeting, so I understood fully what was happening. They wanted me to sign a paper that was all in Hebrew, and I was told that this paper says that I entered Israel illegally without permission. And I'm saying, but you kidnapped me. How can I have entered illegally? No, I'm not signing. Never in 1,000 years. And they said, well, you'll go to court and you'll be sent for 8 years. And I said, I cannot sign something which is untrue. I was kidnapped. I was taken hostage. And I think it was the fourth day, they woke me up at 10, 11 o'clock. It was hard to tell the time because they had removed our watches. And they took me into this court in the dead of night. And I met this judge, and he said, tell me what happened. And I said, well, since I've arrived here, I've been denied legal access and I've been denied a doctor. And I said, that is contrary to the Geneva Conventions. And he didn't seem that impressed. And he said, why did you want to go to Gaza? And I said, I just want to feed the starving. There is a genocide going on, and there is an entire nation being starved to death. And he said, well, maybe you should go back to Gaza. And I said, if you can facilitate me to go to Gaza, I would be delighted. All I want to do is to deliver the aid. He said, well, where will you stay? I said, well, I can't stay anywhere. I said, you've obliterated every house. every hotel, every building. You know, you flattened Gaza, you turned it into a giant car park. There is nowhere for me to stay. I'll just go and deliver my aid and then go home. Mission accomplished. And
mm,
he just screamed at me to get out of his courtroom. And that was the justice that I saw.
mm,
Uh, we weren't allowed to shower. Some of the girls were. And on our penultimate day, they said to us, "You can go and shower." And the girls were really delighted. I was locked up with about eight from all over South America and an Australian. And said, "Well, you know, we should be very wary." And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, we've drawn parallels with the Nazis." And I said, "I really don't want these people herding me into a shower room and
mm,
then locking the door." And they said, "Oh, come on, Yvonne." I said, "Well, just be aware, you know." And I have to say, I was very nervous going to the showers that day because I didn't know what to expect. Um, and basically what I got was a cold shower. You know, it was either cold or very cold. And I made sure that I picked the cubicle next to the door just to be ready to run for my
mm,
life in if necessary. Um, I've since read up on the prison since I've been released, and this is one of the most brutal, harshest prisons that Palestinians have endured. It's full of thieves, sex perverts, aggressive, brutal people, and that's the prison guards. You know,
mm,
it's
mm,
not the prisoners, it's the prison guards. It's all documented. I would not want to endure that again. When I emerged from the Taliban prison, um, when somebody asked me how the experience was, I looked back and thought, "Gosh, I was really quite a badly behaved prisoner, and they did nothing to deserve that bad behavior." When I left this lot, I just felt so angry at
mm,
and betrayed at the way the Israeli women had not 1 ounce of solidarity or sympathy for any of the female prisoners. I've
mm,
never encountered so much hate, and they enjoyed taunting us. One of the women had a double mastectomy.
mm,
She's a cancer survivor. And despite everything she's been through, when she went to shower, they ridiculed her.
mm,
And it's like, you know, what's wrong with these women? Why are they like this? And as I say, you know, not 1 ounce of sympathy or solidarity for a woman who'd had a double mastectomy. It's really quite shameful.
mm, mm. Just lastly, before I let you go, Yvonne, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Um, we've seen this Gaza ceasefire plan. We've seen the Gaza peace summit that's currently ongoing in Egypt at the current moment, and conditions of a ceasefire and aid coming in. From a solidarity point of view, from anyone watching all across the world, what steps should be taken at this current moment when high level decisions are being taken, and we are not in control of them? Unfortunately, the people of Gaza themselves are not even at the table. I mean, Hamas was not even invited in Egypt in that peace summit. uh, what do we do at this current moment when there's motion, and we're not in control of it, and the people of Gaza, most importantly, are not a part of it.
The guns have fallen silent, alhamdulillah, but
Amen.
we must not let our guard down. If ever there was a time to step up and increase the pressure, the time is now. South Africans have been brilliant fighting the apartheid that is a state that is Israel. Uh, because South Africans have endured it already, they're probably prepared more than most on the legal front of what to do. So keep on doing what you're doing. It's heart and mouth time because Israel historically has never honored a ceasefire. And you just feel that it's so fragile that it could just crumble away at any minute. And don't forget, there are militia inside Gaza now that are being paid by Israel to try and destroy Hamas. These people are nothing more than traitors, and as traitors, they deserve the brutal end that some of them have received. We have to step up our pressure across the globe. We have to come up with more flotillas, more inventive ways of putting pressure on our politicians, more demonstrations, more marches, more petitions, more protests. We have to keep on rising. We have to keep on resisting. Evil never sleeps, and we cannot put our foot on the brake now. The whole world is raging over Gaza, and we must channel that rage and put it to positive use.
No, most definitely. We're going to leave it on that note, Dr. Yvonne Ridley. Really appreciate you giving us your time, and hope we chat again soon.
Yes, let's hope so, inshallah.
Some little birdie told me you might be coming to South Africa, but it's just rumors.
Well, there's no smoke without fire.
Salam alaikum, dog. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Okay, walaikum salam.
There you go, Dr. Yvonne Ridley. They're giving us insight on her time in Israeli detention. I think, yeah, very harrowing picture. But these are stories that I think at this point they're no longer surprising. You know, you're no longer gobsmacked when you think about the actions of the IDF and all of the Israeli officials, how they treat women, how they treat people of color, how they treat everyone and anyone who doesn't subscribe to the genocide, to these harrowing human rights atrocities that they're committing against the people of Gaza. And it's just a bit more important to get that perspective, to further inculcate to people the kind of regime that is being dealt with here, and make people understand that they don't care about anyone. They're a self-serving regime that only cares about itself and sustaining its evil ways, all in the midst of that, eating up the children of Gaza. This has been Salam Media Highlights with myself, Salalo Makwidiri. We're going to leave it here for now. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.